The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us on Business Brief. The United States is set to unveil a new round of trade tariffs, a move that could send shockwaves through global supply chains, including those linked to the Philippines. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the Biden administration plans to announce the measures on April 2 with a proposed 20% tariff on most imported goods. The White House says the plan aims to promote fair trade, declaring the days of America being ripped off are over. Analysts warn the move could escalate into a broader trade war, potentially disrupting exports and supply chains in emerging markets like the Philippines. Over the weekend, President Donald Trump said reciprocal tariffs will be imposed on countries that maintain duties on U.S. goods. He's expected to unveil his trade platform in a Rose Garden address on Wednesday.
But those days of America, beginning tomorrow, being ripped off are over. American workers and businesses will be put first under President Trump, just as he promised on the campaign trail. The president's historic action tomorrow will improve American competitiveness in every area of industry, reduce our massive trade deficits, and ultimately protect our economic and national security.
The Philippines could face indirect impacts if global trade tensions intensify, especially in key export sectors like electronics and manufacturing that rely on cross-border flows and U.S. demand. Meanwhile, Democratic senators accuse President Trump of advocating policies that are designed to offset the cost of extending his 2017 tax cuts. On Tuesday, the lawmakers cited Trump's threat of a new tariff against Canada and the slashing of federal agency personnel as examples. Democrats said the cost to the average family could be in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $6,500 this year. They also called on their Republican colleagues to join them publicly in voicing their concerns about Trump's proposed tariffs for Canada.
The whole government is geared, whether it's Social Security or Medicaid or Medicare or housing or agriculture, the whole government is geared to create the dollars that can give tax breaks to the billionaires.
Our colleagues over in the Senate should not be subjects to a king, okay? We are an independent, co-equal branch of government that's got to speak out. And I have not heard an issue like this. Of all the things that have been going on and the chaos up, the corruption up, the costs up, as these tariffs that our Republican colleagues behind closed doors are telling us, keep going, keep going, keep doing this, go away, go do this, because this is just decimating our businesses in our state.
Asian stocks edged down as traders grappled with how to position themselves in the countdown to President Trump's sweeping tariffs announcement. Bloomberg reports a regional gauge declined as indices in Japan and South Korea dropped while Hong Kong fluctuated. U.S. and European equity index futures fell, indicating that stocks may remain under pressure. The dollar was little changed against its major peers, and gold traded just short of its record. The tariffs will take immediate effect after they are announced in the event that's due to start at 4 p.m. New York time, 4 p.m. Manila time on Wednesday.
I think for the markets, the big issue here really is the uncertainty. I think markets would like to get it over and done with. Tell me what it is, let us adjust, and let us get on with it. It's this back and forth, what we're going to do, what we're not going to do, the fear of what they're going to do, we're going to do this, and then we're going to delay the announcement. And it's this uncertainty issue that's really bothering the markets more than I think the tariffs themselves. To the extent that the cost of foreign products goes up, that could be a benefit to domestic producers of particular goods. It could bring about increased manufacturing. It may not. We don't know the impact. We do know that when they tariffed China, everyone thought the world was going to fall apart, and it didn't. So again, the reason for now doing this is also because doing it on a broader basis is because China found ways to circumvent normal channels and, lose some of its profitability out of the trade, but continue to be able to export product through other countries at lower and lower prices.
A media shakeup on Wall Street. Conservative news network Newsmax has skyrocketed over 2,200% since its New York Stock Exchange debut on Monday, surpassing Fox Corp and other media giants. Initially priced at $10 per share, Newsmax closed at $233, pushing its market value to nearly $30 billion. Analysts say retail investors drove the rally, comparing it to the meme stocks like GameStop. Founder Christopher Ruddy, a close Trump ally, now joins America's billionaire ranks with a net worth of over $9 billion. We have to pause for a few reminders, but the biggest business stories from around the country and the market's closing data are up next. Keep it here on Business Brief, only on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Welcome back to Business Brief. A research firm expects the elections to spark a boom in the property market. Details from our correspondent Soo-Jin Kim, who joins us on the line. Soo-Jin, go ahead.
Yes, Raine, the upcoming 2025 midterm elections are shaping up to have a significant impact on the Philippine property market, particularly the residential, condominium, and suburban housing sectors. According to Collier's Philippines, past election cycles, including senatorial races, have historically led to a surge in property demand around a year after the polls conclude. This trend is driven by renewed investor confidence, policy clarity, and optimism in the broader economy. Collier's research director data that says most of the political noise quiets down and senators lay out their legislative agendas, they expect a pickup in demand, especially as the economy continues expanding. In addition to the elections, infrastructure spending, particularly ahead of the election ban, is expected to raise land and property values. Local government officials have been fast-tracking projects such as road rehabilitation and airport upgrades, which could boost interest in residential development, particularly outside Metro Manila. And those are the latest updates for now. Back to you, Raine.
Thank you so much for that report, Soo-Jin Kim. Meanwhile, the battle over the estate of late businessman Eduardo T. takes center stage at the Senate, with his widow accusing Metrobank and RCBC of blocking her access while allowing funds to be moved without her consent. Our correspondent Hannah T. joins us on the line for that story. Hannah, go ahead.
Yes, Raine, Metrobank and RCBC are under Senate scrutiny after a widow accused both banks of freezing her out of her late husband's estate while allegedly allowing his children from a previous marriage to move his millions. Gina T., wife of the late businessman Eduardo T., told Senator Raffy Tulfo that Metrobank has been denying her access to accounts even after her husband's death in 2022. But her stepchildren were able to withdraw funds without delay.
When I started doing my due diligence and sending official letters to RCBC and Metrobank, they were not cooperative at the onset. And my argument with them was, what are you keeping the secret from when I'm the legitimate spouse?
She claimed a Metrobank branch repeatedly invoked the bank's secrecy law. Even her joint account with her husband was frozen. Although she sent letters to Bank President Fabian D. to seek help, she was diverted to customer care. Gina reveals millions were moved into a company account allegedly owned by the T siblings, even while her husband was intubated in the COVID ward in 2022. RCBC also came under fire. She claimed the bank failed to freeze her husband's accounts promptly and allowed withdrawals amounting to 41 million pesos. Despite RCBC officials knowing about the death and even sending flowers to his wake. Senator Tulfo said a PNP forensic report found questionable signatures on the withdrawn checks, including one worth 16 million pesos. He blasted RCBC for skipping verification calls required under their own rules.
Sorry. No. Ako nga, hindi naman ako ganun kalaki ng pera ko. Pag meron akong cheque na inisyu ko 10,000, tinatawag ko ng bangko eh. 10,000 lang ha, yung bangko tatawag sa akin. Mr. Tulpo, igugo ba namin itong check number na ito? 10,000 lang. Yung pa kaya 16 million, sabihin mo sa akin kasi ang daming check yung pumapasok.
RCBC officials promised an internal review, but Metrobank defended its actions and said all heirs must give written consent or a court order before they release any account information. But Gina insisted they had already paid the estate tax, and RCBC eventually cooperated, unlike Metrobank. The Senate committee has subpoenaed bank executives, including B and Gina's stepchildren, for the next round of hearing. Raine?
Definitely an interesting story to follow. Thank you so much for that report, Hannah T. Ayala Corporation and Mitsubishi Corporation have officially signed an 18.4 billion peso investment agreement, creating a 50-50 partnership in AC Ventures. Under the deal, Mitsubishi will subscribe to over 18 million shares in AC Ventures. The funds will be used to redeem Ayala's preferred shares and cover related costs, but the transaction is still pending regulatory approvals, including those from the Securities and Exchange Commission and Philippine Competition Commission. Meanwhile, a big shakeup at Ayala Land as it completes a massive merger with 34 of its subsidiaries, streamlining operations and boosting efficiency. In a disclosure, Ayala Land says its stockholders approved the merger plan last year, and now the SEC has given its green light. Effective April 1, Ayala Land absorbs its wholly owned subsidiaries, including Ayala Land Estates and Ayala Land Hotels. The move is expected to simplify management and unlock greater value for investors. Invest Development Corporation is stepping up its expansion plans with a 24 billion peso capital spending for this year, a 20% increase from last year. Nearly half of the budget, or 47%, will fund ongoing real estate projects. Another 40% will go into expanding investments in hotels, renewables, and power. 10% is earmarked for digitalization and operational efficiency. Meanwhile, Robinson's Land Corporation is gearing up for major growth this year, allocating about 22 billion pesos for expansion projects. Funding will be used for subdivision land, condominiums, and other real estate developments, with money coming from internal cash flow and borrowings. RLC is also set to complete several premium office developments, including GBF Center 2, Cybergate Iloilo Tower 3, and Cybergate Dumaguete. The company is also expanding its workable co-working brand to major business districts like Makati and Bridgetown. Philippine factory gate prices rose about 0.8% in February, marking its first increase in 4 months. The Philippine Statistics Authority reported Wednesday the manufacturer of coke and refined petroleum products registered the fourth highest weight in the computation of the PPI. Now, despite the slight rebound, manufacturers remain cautious over cost pressures and global demand. Bank lending rose in February, pointing to ongoing credit demand across key sectors of the economy. Latest data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas show bank loans rose to 13.03 trillion pesos, up 12.2% year-on-year from 11.61 trillion in February last year. However, this was a slight deceleration from the 12.8% growth recorded in January. The BSP says the expansion was fueled by higher lending to the electricity, gas, and air conditioning sector, as well as wholesale and retail trade and the repair of motor vehicles and motorcycles. Analysts say healthy credit growth signals continued business activity, but they caution that sustained momentum will depend on inflation trends, interest rates, and consumer confidence in the coming months. Filipino consumers get a temporary reprieve from price hikes as the Department of Trade and Industry secures a commitment from manufacturers to hold off on increasing prices of essential goods. Trade Secretary Cristina Roque told Business World that producers of basic necessities and prime commodities have agreed to keep prices steady for now, despite the rising cost of raw materials. She acknowledges that some manufacturers have already filed formal requests to adjust prices, but stresses the DTI's ongoing talks with industry players have been productive, with manufacturers remaining very cooperative. The latest suggested retail price, or SRP, bulletin was released February 6, covering 191 stock-keeping units across 28 product categories. Of those, 40% saw price increases, 3% posted declines, while 56% were unchanged. One product cut its quantity but kept its price. Secretary Roque added that there are no new updates yet on the proposed streamlining of the SRP bulletin, first announced by the DTI in July last year. The agency is considering to delist certain products and retain only core essentials, including sardines, powdered milk, bread, laundry soap, instant noodles, processed meat, and toilet soap. While this price freeze offers short-term relief to consumers still battling high living costs, the DTI faces growing pressure to strike a balance between consumer protection and industry viability as global raw material and logistics costs continue to rise. The Capital Markets Efficiency Promotion Act is now with the Office of the President expected to be signed soon. Special Assistant to the President Frederick Go says once passed, the law will significantly reduce the capital gains tax on stock trades from 0.6% to just 0.1%. The bill aims to cut transaction costs and increase liquidity, which Go believes will make the Philippine stock market more attractive to investors. Go expresses optimism that the law will encourage more Filipino businessmen and foreign investors to engage in the country's capital markets. He urged business leaders to increase stock market transactions, noting that the tax cuts would benefit both the Department of Finance and the Bureau of Internal Revenue. Cabinet members will no longer attend the Senate hearing of the possible arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte. In a letter to Senate President Chis Escudero and Senator Amy Marcos, Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin said issues involving executive privilege have already been thoroughly addressed. Bersamin warned that pushing through with a hearing could violate the sub judice rule, with 4 related petitions still pending before the Supreme Court. Senator Marcos expressed disappointment over Malacanang's decision, saying it shuts the door on much-needed transparency from the executive branch.
Alam ko maraming tanong pa rin, bitin pa rin kasi preliminary report lang naman ang kinaya ko. Marami pa rin katanungan ng taong bayan. Ang dami nga nagte-text, nagtatanong. Tapos marami din bagong impormasyon na sana maging pagkakataon para yung mga magulong sagot, yung hindi magkatugma-tugma ng mga datos, at saka yung mga katanungan ng taong bayan, sana pagkakataon yun para maisagot ng ating gobyerno.
The Senate Foreign Relations Committee is still set to hold its second hearing tomorrow, Thursday, April 3rd. Now, while political in nature, the issue is being closely watched by investors as heightened tensions and legal uncertainty could affect market sentiment, policy stability, and the country's investment climate. A major boost for the Philippines' defense capability. The U.S. State Department has approved the sale of $5.58 billion in F-16 fighter jets to the Philippines. That includes 20 F-16 jets and related equipment. The U.S. State Department says the sale will improve the security of a strategic partner that continues to be an important force for political stability, peace, and economic progress in Southeast Asia. On a recent visit to Manila, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth vowed to reestablish deterrence in the Indo-Pacific region in light of what he says are threats from China. Ultra-Bilyonaryo Manny Villar leads 15 Filipino tycoons who have made it to Forbes' list of the world's richest people. Villar ranked 117th globally, with a net worth of $17.2 billion as of April 1st. This makes him the wealthiest Filipino this year, a big jump from 2024 when he placed third among local billionaires. The former senator and one-time presidential candidate is the chairman of property giant Vista Land and Lifescapes, with his biggest asset being his stake in Golden MV Holdings. Other Filipino ultra-bilyonarios on the Forbes list include Enrique Razon, Ramon Ang, Lucio Tan, and the C siblings of the SM Group. On to the markets now. Philippine shares extend gains for a second session. On the day, Trump's Liberation Day tariffs are set to take effect. The main index had surged 1% back to the 6,200 level, outperforming regional peers. Advancers also outdid decliners, 110 to 82, with value turnover reaching 6.1 billion pesos. Financials led gains, with BDO, BPI, and Metrobank all pitching in over 1%. Meanwhile, at the foreign exchange market, the peso is currently trading at 57 pesos and 21 centavos, flat from Monday's close of 57.21. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Always on top.